Hello, this is Flurry Moon. Welcome back to my channel. We have seen Iceberg after Iceberg on Lost Media. Ultimate Lost Media Iceberg. Lost Movie Iceberg, TV show Iceberg, cartoons, games, books, internet content, etc. But something I have not seen made into an iceberg, or at least an iceberg video, are those cartoons, games, books, movies, music, and media in general that were specifically made with a feminine audience in mind. Now, occasionally in these really popular Lost Media Iceberg videos, we will get, say, one or two entries that focus on pieces of lost girly media, although it's usually kind of in passing, and usually the topic shifts pretty quickly. And in defense of those creators, iceberg videos are kind of meant to be presenting the information and moving on, so I'm not exactly saying something is wrong with that. So I'm here today to give some love to these lost pieces of media that were aimed at girls, women, and just an audience that enjoys feminine media as a whole when it feels like no one else will. Now, a few things before we get into this. I know a lot of people are probably gonna have something to say, which totally I absolutely invite. I'm always here to learn and possibly change my mind or change the way I do things. But before you go running into the comments and saying that I am gendering these pieces of media when they don't need to be, or I'm trying to leave out specific individuals, I totally understand that. But please, before you do, just listen to this before we get into things. I know the term girly lost media is a bit of a blanket statement, and if you typically watch my videos, then you would know that I always make sure when I do these girly lost media videos that I make it very clear that you do not need to identify as a girl or even as a feminine person to find interest in these topics or these pieces of media. And even if you do identify as a girl or feminine, that doesn't necessarily mean you grew up consuming this type of media or that you find interest in it at all. When I talk about girly lost media, I am simply referring to content made with a feminine audience in mind. I feel like that's the best way to get my point across. However, that's kind of not really a catchy title. I hope you understand. I'm simply just trying to bring light to these pieces of lost media that honestly get the short end of the stick in YouTube coverage and in lost media searches, simply because they are overtly girly. And in my opinion, I think femininity is something to celebrate and not hide or push down. And so I don't personally think girly is a bad word. I do know there's a lot of nuance there, so I just want to make that clear. I'm really not trying to exclude anybody or say that only people who identify as women can enjoy this. That would be ridiculous of me. So I still welcome any complaints that any of you may have. Number 2, this is an iceberg video. If you don't know, an iceberg is essentially just a way to organize topics based on obscurity. So the tip of the iceberg is where you're gonna find all of the entries that probably anyone could tell you. But the deeper we go, the more obscure and sometimes weirder things get. And number 3, I promise I'm almost done talking. This video will contain topics I have discussed before, but I promise if you watch all my videos and you're like, what the hell? I wanted new content. I'm gonna talk about a lot of things I have never even heard of until now. You are going to learn so much, I promise you. Anyway, I've been talking for 10 minutes straight. Hopefully people aren't gone already. Let's get into the girly lost media iceberg. Starting with tier 1, which is what I like to call shit even dudes will talk about. These are the pieces of lost media that even guys will mention in their lost media icebergs. So even if you're a little new to lost media, chances are you've heard of these cases. Or you just watch my channel. Audrey and Friends. I mean, come on. This entry needed to be at the tip of the iceberg, as it's one of the only girl-focused pieces of lost media I've seen talked about on various parts of the internet, and it's not really hard to see why. It's pretty fascinating. Audrey and Friends is a British animated series that aired on Channel 5's Milkshake and Shake blocks back in 2002. This was a very unique and whimsical show following Audrey, her friends, and her dog with this very odd art style and an interesting mix of 2D and CGI animation, as well as medieval love potions? Am I reading that right? The series did not air for a long time at all, getting cancelled pretty quickly as it received pretty poor ratings. It also never got a home media release, and of course, the original tapes of the episodes had been recycled after Channel 5 shut down their archival library. So out of the 26 episodes in total, we only have one full episode, and that is the pilot. This episode actually aired in the year 2000, as it was originally supposed to be one Christmas special. However, the network picked it up as a series, and the rest of those episodes aired in 2002. Those are what we are missing. There is still hope though, as the series didn't only air on Channel 5. Audrey and Friends would be seen airing on BFBS from October 2003 to March 2004, New Zealand's Prime TV in 2003, and Home Choice's Scamp around 2005. This series is incredibly odd and interesting, as well as a little creepy, so it makes sense this is a big topic in the community, especially due to the fact that basically 90% of it is completely missing. All we have is the pilot episode, as well as a few random screenshots and possible descriptions of later episodes. So, have you seen Audrey and Friends? Tinkerbell and the Ring of Belief. Wow, have I been dying to talk about this, you guys. Tinkerbell was a movie released in 2008, and the plot followed Tinkerbell arriving in Pixie Hollow, meeting new friends, and most importantly, discovering her sense of self and what her talents are. However, there was actually an original version of this movie with a completely different plot that never saw the light of day. The original plot, as we have gathered through the information that had been released before it was changed, was actually going to be a lot more intense than what we ended up getting. The story would have followed Tinkerbell and her friends as they trained to become wing maidens, while keeping the Ring of Belief going. The Ring of Belief, which would have kept imagination in humans alive, would be broken by Tinkerbell accidentally, and the movie would consist of the girls trying to fix this mistake and in turn save their world essentially. However, of course, this plot would be scrapped completely by the chief director of Walt Disney Animation Studios, supposedly after viewing a draft of the film. He described it as quote-unquote virtually unwatchable. Not only did he demand the story to be rewritten, but we would also see a major recast of the role of Tinkerbell, who was originally going to be voiced by Brittany Murphy. I think Brittany Murphy was amazing, but I'm really interested in what exactly was wrong with her performance, if anything.
That does it! First, I'm a mess up and a loser. Now I'm a thief.
Although this original movie never saw the light of day, we do have a good amount of content surrounding the release, such as a few trailers, concept art, merchandise, etc. There were even some flash games on the original Disney Fairy site in the mid-2000s that surrounded the lost plot. We also have this Pixie Chicks scene featuring a rock concert, although I'm not sure what the context is here. Although we will never see Tinkerbell and the Ring of Belief in its entirety, as it was never made to begin with, it's always possible that someday we will see the draft of the original plot that apparently was so unwatchable. Really makes me wonder just how bad it actually was. Magical Girl Rion-chan. I have talked about this before, and I'm glad I get the opportunity to go a little bit deeper into it this time. This series was created as part of a collaboration between Japan and China sometime in 2006. The plot is said to follow 3 young girls who gain powers from Sanrio stuffed animals, each getting their own magical forms, inspired by Hello Kitty, Badsmaru, and Cinnamoroll. Each girl also played their own instrument, and were a part of a band together called the Flash Dolls. Rion with the guitar, Minamo being the violinist, and Kana the drummer. Again, I've talked about this case before, but I wish I had gone deeper into these character designs because I am simply obsessed. First of all, the instruments fit the character designs perfectly. Of course, Batsmaru is a drummer. Monomo's design is actually insane with the cloud accents, and that weird violin is so badass. And of course, Rion with her classic main character look, the 2 different shoes, the bows, and you know me, the pink hair is my favorite. Photos have resurfaced over the years of the girls, and even other characters, including Rion's sister, and a few stills of the supposed villains of the series. A lot of this information I'm getting is from a blog called Rion is Missing, and I highly recommend checking it out. It is just First of all, it's just so cute to look at, but they've done a really good job compiling all the information about this piece of lost media into one really adorable place. There was an event that included a whole Rion section with merchandise and figurines, but these were only for display and not for sale. And since then, fans have actually found the entire Chinese version of the manga and the second Japanese manga. There had also been quite a few rumors that magical girl Rion-chan had an anime, and this was based on a 3D animated transformation scene of the girls posted online, but alas, it had been confirmed by Azusa Ray, who had worked on designing some of the figurines, that an anime never existed for the series, and this video was only made to be showcased at this specific event. However, there does seem to be another animation sample we still have yet to see in full. They are also still looking for the first Japanese book and a bonus magazine. We do, however, again have the entire Chinese manga, which is a huge win. If you're interested in this topic and want to learn more, be sure to check out the Rion is Missing blog, and this video by Addie does a great job diving into the franchise. LPSO. In September of 2009, an online virtual world game surrounding Hasbro's Littlest Pet Shop was developed by Electronic Arts and Frima Studios. The site allowed you to enter the special code on your LPSO plushie, and this would allow you to make your own account, customize and accessorize your pet, play minigames, and connect with other players online. The site would only be available for 2 years, discontinuing on December 1st, 2011. We don't know exactly why it was shut down, as online games were still definitely super popular at this time. However, fans over the years have worked to archive the game as best they can, and even created LPSO Revived, which features any and all archived media we have. However, the site hasn't been updated since 2023 and is still left incomplete. LPSO now joins the thousands of other online games from the 2000s and 2010s that are now considered lost media. Hannah Montana anime. Again, I've talked about this before, but how could I leave this out of the girly lost media iceberg? Let's be real. It's a shocker to many. A Hannah Montana anime was actually in the works in 2009. This project was in the hands of Toei Animation, which is huge, but was canceled before production and therefore never actually even officially announced to the public. The first ever mention of this anime was in 2010 in a Dragon Ball Z forum post. Stick with me here. The post was made by a user named Wasted Wisher, a supposed animator at Toei Animation at the Philippines location. His legitimacy would be confirmed when a few of the projects he had leaked turned out to be very true. In one of these posts, he casually, in passing, dropped that a Hannah Montana anime was currently in production. His post reads, "Most of the work will be for the key animators, but I certainly hope some of it trickles down to the in-between animators so I can get my hands on it. They've already passed around some scenes from the new Digimon and Hannah Montana series, and I still haven't been able to draw anything from these shows." Well, a commenter was quick to point out, isn't Hannah Montana a live-action sitcom? But Wasted Wisher responded, confirming that he was referring to an anime adaptation and that production had actually begun. He states, "The production was given to Toei last year, but they wanted to see first which art style would suit it the best. 4 different artists made the final cut, and I distinctly remember 2 short music videos being made, each using different art styles from 2 of the finalists. I suppose it's okay to talk about now since production is underway, meaning everyone will know about it soon enough in a couple months or so. This project would be scrapped during production, leaving us only with Wasted Wisher's post as proof this ever even existed. My king L Supersonic Q began reaching out to not only Wasted Wisher, who had then been fired from Toei Animation, sorry king, but another animator at Toei Philippines. Although we got more verification that this anime was supposed to happen and confirmation that animation stills did exist, Toei had become extra protective of their content since they had faced many leaks in the past, which I mean, literally how can we argue with that? This is where the story ends. L Supersonic Q's video on the topic was made in 2018, and I don't believe anything else has come up about it since. I honestly would love to see some rough sketches of the possible art styles, as I and many other people think Hannah Montana would translate extremely well to an animated series. It's honestly perfect. We have tons of magical girl living a double lifestyle anime, and I desperately need to see a magical girl transformation from Miley into Hannah. I think we were so robbed of this. Anyway, moving on. Milky Way and the Galaxy Girls. I first heard about this obscure franchise in one of Izzy ZZZ's videos, and I remember thinking how huge this should have been. Milky Way and the Galaxy Girls was a toy line created by Lauren Faust, who, if you don't know, is the creator of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and worked closely on the Powerpuff Girls, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, and created DC's Superhero Girls. But before My Little Pony, there was Lauren Faust's passion project, Milky Way and the Galaxy Girls. The franchise was inspired by 80s Strawberry Shortcake, with each girl having a different theme, but these girls would be inspired by planets. Only 5 different dolls were released as a toy line, the dolls released consisting of Milky Way, Venus, Jupiter, Pluto, Mars, and one fan actually got Neptune. I do believe Neptune was supposed to be released officially for Series 2, along with the Sun, Mercury, the Moon, and Uranus. Series 2 would go unreleased, so although some dolls were actually made, they were never sold, and even the dolls that were sold are extremely rare nowadays. Check out this Reddit post actually of this user who just came across one of the dolls in a thrift store. Crazy find, by the way, I'm totally not jealous. But I think we have to take a second to just admire these cloth dolls. Like, I just have such a love for this kind of doll. It reminds me of TY Girls, if you remember like TY's attempt at making dolls. This style, I said it before, it really reminds me of like Monster High, with like each doll having a gimmick that relates to their own personal theme. But oh my god, the art style in general, chef's kiss. I think it's so aesthetically pleasing in my opinion. The style of their clothing and the accessories and just everything about them, I would have loved to get this. More on the dolls themselves. Originally, Lauren Faust had made the dolls by hand, but eventually FAO Schwarz did end up selling them at Toys R Us and other places like that, but apparently they didn't do so well, and that's possibly why we never got the Series 2 dolls. But Lauren Faust had actually pitched the idea as an animated series to Hasbro. The pilot idea was for Milky Way to accidentally free the black hole from a planetoid, then meeting each girl and using their different powers to defeat the black hole. I think this sounds honestly really cool. However, Hasbro literally rejected this idea and I'm still mad about it, but that's okay. There was a book you could purchase on Amazon featuring an animated Milky Way and the title, What Planet Are You From? Although it's no longer available for purchase, screenshots of the book in its entirety have been uploaded. The original doll. I actually believe this is my first time talking about music lost media. I can't believe it. Let me know if you'd like to see a full video of musical lost media. I think that would be really fun. But anyway, chances are if you're into this topic, you've heard of the 2004 lost Britney Spears album entitled The Original Doll. If you've kept up with Britney Spears' lore within the last, say, decade, you probably are familiar with how she has not had the easiest time in the industry and personal life, as she was held under a conservatorship by her father for over a decade, leaving her with little to no control over any decisions in her own life. Although the conservatorship did not begin until 2008, 4 years after this album had started production, I think it's fair to assume the lack of control Britney had started long before. So you may be able to understand why this unreleased album that Britney had supposedly taken control of more than any other project she was involved with is something that fans have been wanting to hear since the public first got a hold of this information. Britney was very vocal about her excitement for this project at the time, often explaining how great it was to be actively writing and working on these tracks more independently than ever before. The only song we have ever heard from the unfinished album was shared by Britney herself at Kiss FM live on air, where she also announced her new album entitled The Original Doll was halfway done and would be coming out hopefully quote unquote before summertime of 2005.
Good luck with your album. It's untitled.
It's probably going to be called The Original Doll, so.
And it's half done?
Yeah, it's halfway done right now.
All right, so maybe by the summer, maybe by the fall?
Yeah, maybe a little bit earlier.
All right, I know everybody's going to want to hear the new single over and over, so I'm going to try to play as much as I can, okay? The new Mona Lisa.
Hot.
It's just a taste.
This did not go over well with her label, Jive Records, and they even came out with a statement clarifying that no official album was planned. The song she released was entitled Mona Lisa, and it wasn't even a studio recording, simply a live performance with Britney and her tour band. However, we would get the studio version of Mona Lisa on the B-side of Britney Spears' extended play, Britney and Kevin Chaotic, whatever that is. There are other speculated tracks, but nothing has ever been confirmed. This was honestly an early sign of Britney's lack of control in her career and life, and it's honestly kinda sad reading all her statements describing how excited she was for this work to be released. What do you guys think about the original doll? What are we drinking today? I have, I'm matching a hot pumpkin spice latte, and it's so good. Tier 2, or what I like to call not super well known, but has small cult followings. We are now on to the next tier of the iceberg, and although these topics aren't talked about super often, there are small communities that bring them up, and many of these entries do have Lost Media Wiki articles, so therefore they're not super obscure, and I cannot put them further down on the iceberg. Let's get into it. LPS Tube Lost Media. I think we can all relate to being interested in a toy or plushie franchise growing up, heading to YouTube to look them up, only to find hundreds of videos including skits, music videos, drama series, and full-on productions starring these figures. For Littlest Pet Shop fans, that was LPS Tube. Content created mostly by children and preteens almost always ends up being victims of lost media due to the creators growing up, often feeling embarrassed or disinterested in their old hobby of filming themselves playing with toys, and often taking these videos down themselves. However, those who consumed LPS Tube content are now left to pick up the pieces with their now fading memories. So many LPS Tube videos are now considered lost media that there's even a section for lost media on the LPS Tube wiki, and it is stacked. An interesting series that is still partially lost is entitled A Daughter's Revenge, that was actually deleted by the creator LPS Skittles due to getting hate mail from parents claiming the series was so scary their children were getting nightmares. This is so funny. This series was, from what I can remember, not very kid-friendly. The plot involved, how can I say this, like a toxic family dynamic. It was a horror series. There were 10 episodes in total, however, only 5 have been found as of 2025. A lot of lost LPS Tube videos are unconfirmed videos. We still have so many online users desperately trying to even find out certain videos that have now most likely been erased from the internet, and they don't even have a name to connect them to. We could talk about LPS Tube forever, however, we have much to discuss, but I would love to dedicate an entire video to this topic another time if you guys are interested. Pokemon Pink. The first 2 Pokemon games were released in 1996 as Pokemon Red and Green, the only stark difference between the twin games being the kinds of Pokemon you can catch. In 1996, Pokemon Yellow would be released as the third in the series and as a standalone title, unlike its predecessors Green and Red. Now this is most likely because Yellow is considered to be a sister game of Green and Red, as it's more of a variation on those 2 games. Yellow was also made to promote the anime. However, that doesn't mean there wasn't a sister game planned. And that brings us to Pokemon Pink. Pink was actually planned on being the sister game to Yellow, and we only know this because there are several mentions of it in Yellow's source code. Surprise, surprise, we got a hold of this due to a data leak. Shocked Pikachu face. In April of 2020, Nintendo's data was leaked onto 4chan because of course it was. There was a whole thing. And this is where we got our hands on Pokemon Yellow's source code, which included the phrase Pocket Monsters Pink and Yellow. Other files included Pink in the names, and even included Pink Package alongside Yellow Package. This just about confirms that Pokemon Pink was, at the very least, an idea and was planned to be released as a sister game to Yellow, similarly to Green and Red. Now, the rest is purely speculation, with many fans assuming it would be a quote-unquote girl-targeted game, and possibly being the first in the series to include a girl main character option. Other theories include either Jigglypuff or Clefairy featured as the main starter, similarly to Pikachu as the face of Pokemon Yellow. Clefairy's theory holds a little more weight to it, as they are seen next to Pikachu in a Game Boy camera frame only released in Japan. Many fans also speculate this idea never saw the light of day because Nintendo didn't think it would sell well as a female-focused entry. It's not exactly surprising that young boys who are typically made to feel stupid or weak for finding interest in even the color pink because of its association with girls may not gravitate toward a product that could subject them to such judgment. This is a whole other issue because why is being compared to women so horrible, but that's besides the point. Now, this could totally not be the case, I'm aware of that. Maybe Pokemon Pink was simply an idea that was forgotten or put off indefinitely for other reasons. However, there's no doubt in my mind there are other pieces of media that have been cancelled and unreleased due to fears that not enough people would resonate with something that leans into its femininity. As my friend Miriam pointed out in her Girly media video, media that is overtly masculine is media for everyone, as media that is overtly feminine is for girls. Anyway, tangent, moving on. Webkinz Wishing Well 1. There's not too much information on this one, but I did find it interesting nonetheless. If you played Webkinz as a kid, chances are you remember some of the games you could only play once daily, such as the Wheel of WoW, Jumbleberry Fields, Spree, and of course, Wishing Well 2. But ever notice how there's no Wishing Well 1? Well, on July 12th, 2007, Wishing Well was taken out of the arcade and replaced with Wishing Well 2 that same day. Now, nobody knows 100% why this decision was made, but we can assume it was due to the fact that it resembled a slot machine, which could be taken as promoting gambling. With that, the original Wishing Well game has not been playable since 2007. Who here remembers the original Wishing Well game? Winx Club. Many of us know Winx Club, the iconic animated series following a group of teenage fairies that aired on several different channels throughout the years, originally airing in Italy on January 28th, 2004. However, not many casual fans know that there is actually an early Winx Club pilot episode back when the series was going to be entitled Magic Bloom. This pilot was created all the way back in 1999, years before we would see Winx Club debut. The original pilot had the main cast as younger teens, and the art style was a tad different as well. Although this pilot was showcased at a test screening in 2002, and even received very positive feedback from viewers, the creator of the series, Eugenio Straffi, was simply unsatisfied with how his project came out, specifically the dull designs and coloring. In 2018, a 30-second clip of the pilot was shown at the 2018 Luca Comics and Games convention in celebration of Winx Club's 15th anniversary. That clip has been archived, and we also have sketches, some screenshots, and behind-the-scenes information. However, the entire pilot episode is still considered partially lost. I never got super into Winx Club growing up, but I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this entry. How do you feel about the original art style? Tier 3, or what I like to call, a man has probably never uttered these words. We are now on to Tier 3 of the Iceberg. This is for the pretty obscure entries, and although there are some discussions online about these topics here and there, for the most part, I've never seen them discussed here on YouTube. Besides, of course, when I've brought them up, that doesn't mean I'm the only one, but it means they're pretty obscure, so let's get into it. Victoria's 2020 Zoom reunion. This one honestly shocked me, as I could not believe something that I feel like happened just yesterday is like completely gone. This just goes to show that it is not just media from before this decade that can easily go missing. Back in 2020, the Victoria's cast got together on Zoom to do a reunion discussing their time on the beloved Nickelodeon series. The call would consist of Ariana Grande, Victoria Justice, Elizabeth Gillies, Leon Thomas III, Matt Bennett, Avon Jogia, Daniela Monet, and Dan Schneider. Ooh, Yeah, maybe now I know why this is lost media. Many fans remember watching the hour-long Zoom call on YouTube when it was released, but claim it was taken down, and all that is left to show for the reunion is a few different short clips. Others claim the 1 hour was never even officially released, as it was always meant to be more of a private moment between the cast aside from the short clip they released. This one has me stumped. So, do any of you remember watching the hour-long Victorious reunion? Unsettling 15-second version of Lalaloopsy So Sweet Playhouse commercial. This is where we get into the more niche topics of lost media that don't even have lost media wiki articles or anything else besides a short Reddit post. These cases that are not even necessarily confirmed are some of my favorite entries, so let's get into this odd Lalaloopsy commercial this user saw back in the early 2010s. Paper Castles says, "As a kid, I was obsessed with Lalaloopsy. Naturally, I would always try to catch the commercials for new toys as they came on TV. Oftentimes, when a toy had been advertised for a while, there would be alternative 15-second versions aired to advertise the product without being as costly as a full 30-second spot. I remember distinctly that there was a 15-second spot for the So Sweet Playhouse commercial, which I found very unsettling as a kid. I remember the cuts between lyrics were really jarring, and I believe the background music was left out, leaving only the vocals and sound effects. I believe this product came out in 2012, so the most likely place to find it would be in Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network commercial compilations from late 2012 to 2013. This post is very relatable, honestly, because I was always weirded out by shortened content as a kid, like commercials and especially TV show theme songs. Those always really bothered me, honestly. This post actually received a comment from another user who remembers exactly what OP describes. I remember seeing the full 30-second ad because it played frequently. I also recall seeing the 15-second ad maybe once or twice. If I remember correctly, I saw it right before an episode of a show started. Can't remember exactly what show. I remember being kind of freaked out as well because of the vocals. It almost seemed like the footage of the commercial had been sped up, but the music / lack of was very off. In my kid brain, I chalked it up to the commercial was just sped up so the next show could play. I would have had to have seen it on either Cartoon Network or Nick because those were the only channels I watched at that time period. I actually think this could be found pretty easily through watching some commercial compilations. However, no one has been able to find said creepy shortened Lalaloopsy commercial. Interstar University. In July of 2010, American Girl doll joined the long list of Toys to Life virtual world online games with Interstar University. A line called My American Girl Dolls were released, in which you could enter the code included and log on to the site and begin your American Girl campus life. The map included locations like dorms, a student center, shopping center, etc. You could also play mini games, customize your room, buy new clothes, and connect with other players. Interstar University was taken down on May 21st, 2015. Problem is, when the dolls were first being sold back in 2010, they were over $100, and therefore not many people got to play the game, and therefore not one archive of the site is available. And as far as I can tell, all we have are a few screenshots and different screen recordings. Do you remember Interstar University? Pet Party Girls Go Games ad. Okay, so this is a last minute entry. I actually don't even have a script for this. However, I was looking for random stuff just to add because I felt like the iceberg really needed to be thick. And I came across this comment I got on my channel and I thought it was super interesting, so I'll read it for you guys. Hi Flurry, I've been a fan of your channel for so long and I have some girly lost media for you. As a child, I was obsessed with Girls Go games like most girls our age, but I would always get these ads at the bottom for a game that was in this foreign language. I believe it to be either Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. I'm not sure as I was so young, but anyway, it would be for this adorable in-depth pet game where you could take care of the pets. I remember you could clean them, walk them, dress them up, etc. To me, it felt so in-depth compared to the point-and-click games on Girls Go Games. I know this description isn't a lot, but it has been plaguing me forever. As a child, I could never search it up. It would have to be an ad on Girls Go Games for me to find it, lol. I would drop everything when it would pop up. I never even knew anything I was doing in the game either, considering it was in another language. Thank you so much and I adore your videos. Thank you. Okay, so A commenter asked any other info about it or the way it looked, and Tenby I'm sorry, says, it was animated and had bright colors. It always stood out to me how much more in-depth the gameplay was from the other pet sims where you would just take care of one pet and the game would be over. This one, you were basically running a doggy daycare, I think, and it may have gone on infinitely. Axolotl person says, sounds interesting. Was there any main characters or main pets? Also, any figures, character designs you remember at all? And is there anything you could compare the art style to, like a show or another game? OP says, I wish I could give you like names or literally anything. The entire thing was in like Chinese or Japanese. Again, I was only like 6, so I would just kind of have to remember which buttons did what, lol. I want to say the art style seemed similar to the LPS show, but I'm even hesitant to say that because it's so blurry in my memory. Another commenter, Gummy Bear Astro, says, wait, this is so interesting. And our OP says, I'm so glad that it's interesting to some people. I cannot stress enough that I would just be on Girls Go Games playing Flash games and pray the ad for this game would pop up so I could go play it. I had to be around 6 or 7. Don't say anything, you guys. So about 2010 to 2011. Since it was in a foreign language, I couldn't read anything in the game. I just got acclimated after a while to what each button did. I was too young to know how to go into the history and find the website that way. So that's the information we have about the game, and we did get a few other comments from Gummy Bear Astro saying, I wonder if this could be Pet Party. It's not Asian, but it's a partially lost game from early 2010s that was on Girls Go Games. Either way, even if Pet Party is not the game that OP is looking for, that's still lost as well. So let's talk about Pet Party for a second. This is like a 2-in-1 special. I'm just looking at the Lost Media Wiki. I'm sorry, this is so... I did no prior research to this. This is all live. You get a live reading of me finding this out. But apparently, Pet Party was an MMO that was on Girls Go Games and others, and it was launched sometime between the 2000s and early 2010s. Lost Media Wiki says it was shut down on June 30th, 2014. This does look kind of like Moshi Monsters mixed with Littlest Pet Shop. Wow, this is really interesting. Pets had stats and everything, and you had to properly maintain happiness, hygiene, hunger, and lucky points. So this does actually seem pretty in-depth, and I do believe you could customize your character. There's not a whole lot even on this Lost Media Wiki page. There was a currency, you could buy pet food, furniture, clothes, all that kind of stuff. I'm very hesitant to say this is what our OP is looking for because I don't know, the foreign language to me, that's a very specific detail. And like they said, they had to memorize like all the buttons and stuff. So I feel like unless Pet Party was released in different languages, which could very much be the case. So sorry again for not being super well versed on this topic. This was literally, like when I say this is last minute, hold up, you could get married in Pet Party? I would be pretty confident in saying this was it if I knew that it was released in other languages. This is kind of like a double Lost Media entry in one. I find it super interesting, and honestly, the story is just really wholesome. Like OP was just praying that this game would pop up. Like, that's adorable. Why am I in tears? Anyway, let me know if you guys remember either Pet Party or this mysterious Girls Go Game ad game. Amy's American Page 1. Back in 2001, Sega released a mobile phone game service in Japan called Sonic Cafe, and this app was available on the iMode, EZ Web, and Vodafone. Users could play games using the service if they paid a fee of 315 yen a month, which is about $2. Sonic Cafe was discontinued in 2007, leaving many of the games provided to become lost media. One of those games would be Amy's American Page 1. This was based on the Japanese card game American Page 1, and it features Amy playing against Rouge, Cream, and a Hero Chow. The artwork for Amy and Cream are reused art from Sonic Advance 3, while Rouge and the Chow artwork are actually recycled from Sonic Adventure 2. This piece of media is so interesting to me because because it is the only Sonic game made by Sega to have an all-female cast. Although I do believe Chao are genderless, it is also Amy's only game that she is the face of, so I think it's important to talk about. We do have archived articles discussing the rules of the game, as well as a handful of screenshots, so it is partially found, but of course the game is unplayable today. Hopefully one day we'll see Amy's American Page 1 or her own game in the future. Hello Kitty Game Boy Camera. The Game Boy Camera, or the Pocket Camera in Japan, was released in 1998, and this was an accessory you could attach to your Game Boy and used to take grayscale photos, which you could edit, share, and even print out using the Game Boy printer. The camera could even swivel, making for a great way of taking selfies, and this was one of the first ever commercially available digital cameras. The product came in several different colors, and there were actually even a few special releases of the Pocket Camera as well, including the unreleased Hello Kitty Game Boy camera. Both the kitty-themed camera and printer were advertised along the Pocket Hello Kitty, which was a tiny video game almost reminiscent of Tamagotchi. That game was released, but was only made available in Japan. Anyway, after the Hello Kitty Pocket Camera and printer were advertised, we were left with radio silence on the matter, and it was unfortunately forgotten. That is, until the 2018-2020 Nintendo-Microsoft data breach. We got a lot of data breaches, data leaks in here. This version of the camera is known to be quite different from other releases, such as completely different menus and minigames. Like the others, you can take, edit, and share photos, and even other Sanrio characters were planned to be added, such as Pom Pom Purin and Bods Maru, specifically being used for an error screen. We only have one photo of the Pocket Camera. Dance Moms UK. Wow, am I excited to discuss this entry. Huge shout out to Eevee World for bringing this to everyone's attention. I'm a huge fan of Dance Moms. I actually had an Instagram fan page for the series back in 2013 with 7,000 followers, might I add. Anyway, if you don't know, Dance Moms was a reality show that began in 2011 following a small group of dancers and their mothers in Pittsburgh at the Abby Lee Dance Company. Abby Lee Miller being the girls' teacher and bully, pretty much. Anyway, as you can imagine, the show got pretty big as, in my opinion, the original cast together was honestly magic. The relationships were real and raw, as this really was just a small group of mothers who honestly did not know what they were getting into with this reality show. Anyway, the show got so big that we saw a ton of spin-offs. Abby's Ultimate Dance Competition, Abby's Studio Rescue, and even other Dance Moms titles like Dance Moms Miami and Dance Moms UK. Dance Moms UK, originally airing in 2014, actually got 2 seasons, although season 2 was only aired in the UK. This show, of course, had a completely different cast, with Jennifer Ellison as the dance teacher. The series was also incredibly different from the original because they actually got to use real licensed music instead of the horrible copyright-free songs Dance Moms had to use. But it's been brought to my attention that besides a few clips, trailers, and the shortened dances, this series has become lost media. Dance Moms UK was streaming on Lifetime for quite some time, however, it has since been taken down. More people are finding out about this currently, and I'm going to fall down the rabbit hole once I can focus on actively searching for this piece of media, but what do you guys think? Tier 4, or what I like to call, I had to do some digging to find anything on these. We are now at the bottom of the iceberg. These are the topics that I simply just find extremely difficult to find any information on, and chances are, if you've sat through this whole video and you're like, I already know all of these, this is stupid, I guarantee this section will change your mind. Let's get into the depths of the Girly Lost Media iceberg. Teimo's Funny Shake. This one I actually learned from one of you guys. Huge thanks to Lillian for bringing this to my attention. Teimo's Funny Shake was a Korean cartoon released in 2004 by Lot World and NTO Media. And that's actually about it. That's all we know. There is a Funny Shake website that can be accessed using the Wayback Machine, which is kind of a nightmare to view because none of the photos will load, and I can't speak Korean, although I was able to translate a few things, and it seems like the site had features like polls, flash games, pictures, videos, just random topics and stuff. Other than that, it's really hard to find anything regarding the series in general. I found this Pinterest screenshot of a badge from Lot World's website in 2004, supposedly promoting the cartoon. If anyone here speaks Korean, I'd love to see exactly what this promo pic says. I've honestly had my doubts on if this was actually an animated series at all, due to the lack of information, and all the screenshots I've seen look more like fun and cute wallpapers for online users and stuff. However, it's been described as an animated series everywhere I've researched, so I'm still doing some digging, but I thought I would include it here to hopefully get some more attention on this fascinating case. I will definitely talk about this in the future, but what do you guys think? Pretty Cure deleted scene. This entry is extremely interesting, as media that had to be altered due to current events is always something that has fascinated me. In this case, we are discussing the Pretty Cure All-Stars movie that was released in Japan on March 19th, 2011. This action-filled magical girl series was no stranger to some pretty intense scenes, but the timing of one in particular resulted in the scene being cut from the movie at the last minute. This was due to the scene being unfortunately reminiscent of the earthquake and tsunami that heavily affected Japan just a few weeks prior. A Reddit comment suggested that the scene was added back in for the DVD release, but I can find no mentions of this or even descriptions of what the scene may have looked like. Every source I see mentioning this topic never mentions anything about a DVD release that added the scene back in, so I'm gonna take that with a grain of salt, but also I'm not sure. What do you guys think? iCarly.com Bad Guy Trivia. This was posted on the Lost Media subreddit just last year, and although it actually garnered a decent amount of attention and upvotes, there hasn't been much more since the post was made. The post reads as follows. Hello, I am looking for screenshots or recorded gameplay of a specific game that was on the iCarly website. I checked the iCarly wiki and I think I found the title for it. Bad Guy Trivia. I'm looking for this because I remember playing it when the iCarly website was still up. This was over 10 years ago. I want to find it because I remember being so creeped out by it as a kid and having to call my mom to help me play it because apparently I just wasn't good at it. The premise was odd for an iCarly game. You would be shown composite sketches of suspects and then, from memory, match them to the faces of people shown. They were not characters from iCarly, nor were they real criminals. Spencer and Carly were used in the game to explain how it works. I remembered the background was dark, probably to make it more creepy. I just want to make sure I'm not losing it and this was a real game, which it seems to be. I'd like to see some proof of it though, for fun. Thanks. Also, I tried to use the link on the wiki to this game through the Wayback Machine to no avail. It's not surprising to me that there is a ton of iCarly.com Lost Media. Although we have sites like the Wayback Machine that do a pretty decent job at archiving sites, these weird little niche minigames that were, not to be rude, pretty forgettable, have faded into obscurity over the years. However, OP did find this page recovered by archive.today that shows further proof of iCarly Bad Guy Trivia existing. I think there's a decent chance this can be found, so hopefully including this entry will get the word out. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic mystery episode. This is a bit of an odd entry, and maybe it's selfish on my part to include it when there is no confirmation on if this ever happened or not, hence why it's at the very bottom of the iceberg. However, this is my freaking iceberg, and this is honestly for fun. Even if this somehow wasn't an official piece of My Little Pony media, I'm still interested in finding out what this commenter actually saw that day. Let's get into it. I love your video so much, Flurry. Thank you. There's a possible lost media that I haven't been able to find. I commented before about it, but I don't remember where, so commenting again. Back when I was a kid, I was a massive fan of My Little Pony, still am, and back then I was kinda poor and didn't have cable or internet, and our old neighbors were kind enough to let us use their internet, and whenever my mom was busy with something and they would help, me and my brother were allowed to go into their house and watch their cable TV. I remember a commercial that advertised a My Little Pony video that I later found out was the season 3 episode 3, Too Many Pinkie Pies, but the commercial advertised a different premise for the episode. In the released episode, it was about Pinkie Pie realizing that she wouldn't be anywhere to hang out with her friends and went to find the legend of the mirror pool where she made copies of herself. However, in the commercial, it had something about how all the ponies cloned themselves in the mirror pool. I remember there being clips of the ponies with their clones. I tried searching this commercial here and there, but all that comes up is the released episode. I think it's important to acknowledge here that we often misremember things way more than we realize, so I'm well aware maybe OP simply is mixing this up with another episode or something similar to that. However, I can't help but be intrigued by this one. I've always found interest in Mandela effect-like pieces of lost media, and maybe there is a logical explanation for this, such as the original storyline being scrapped. Either that, or maybe this was somehow a YouTube video or another form of unofficial My Little Pony media. But if that's the case, what could this video be? The dog world. If you're a frequent watcher of my channel, chances are you know I've talked about The Dog before. If you don't know, The Dog is a media franchise that uses photos of dogs and other animals with a fisheye lens. They have been known for selling monthly calendars and postcards, as well as making the dog plushies and the award-winning title, The Dog Island, for the Wii and PS2. I'm kidding, this game is actually incredibly niche and weirdly dark at times, but it wins awards in my house, that's for sure. Anyway, The Dog actually has some lost media. I know maybe this isn't super girly, but again, it's my Iceberg, go make your own if you don't like it. Back in 2023, a post was made on the Lost Media subreddit asking about a fully lost The Dog World online pet browser game by Scholastic. Important, this is a completely different thing than Scholastic's home base, the Stacks, which came afterwards. Hi, I'm posting to see if anyone has anything, and I mean anything, videos, photos, even low-quality camcorder footage about Scholastic's The Dog World. I played it as a kid, and the only thing I could find is the thank you for visiting page announcing it closing down. Surprisingly, it's still active and you can view it without using Internet Archive. Background information. The Dog World was a very basic online pet simulator game, Flash I'm pretty sure, but the webpage index does end in HTML, hosted by Scholastic on their website. It was very simple. You chose what dog you had, picked a color for your doghouse, and then you would feed and take care of the dog. There were no other pets, no human avatars, but I remember being able to take your dog for a little walk. In a way, it's like a more simple, lower quality Nintendogs. It's hard to make a post for this because I could not for the life of me find any other evidence of this game existing, but it clearly did because a page referencing it is still up on Scholastic's website. Maybe one of you have personal photos / are better at researching than me. No other photos are available on the Internet Archive, or maybe I just can't get it to work. Please let me know. I just need to see something from this game. I don't expect a full version of it to be found anytime soon. Thanks. So at first I thought I might be misunderstanding the post, and maybe this had nothing to do with the dog I know and love, but upon visiting the Scholastic site on the Wayback Machine, they do have a ton of the dog related pages, so it must be what I suspected. I'm a huge fan of pet simulator games and the dog, so this would be a huge find, although nothing has come up from it. So, do any of you remember playing The Dog World? Ladies Code Baseball Performance. So this is the last entry in the video, and before we get into this, I just want to give a little content warning as we will be briefly discussing loss of life due to a car accident specifically. Although the actual lost media we will be discussing has nothing to do with the accident, I still will very quickly be discussing it as it is semi-important to the context of the group. Ladies Code was a K-pop group that debuted in 2013, and they were starting to become a real force to be reckoned with in the industry, being nominated for and winning several awards, as well as their releases Bad Girl, Pretty Pretty, Kiss Kiss, So Wonderful, etc., doing very well in the charts. However, tragically, on September 3rd, 2014, just a year after their debut, the group was involved in a fatal car accident, leading to 2 out of the 5 members, Eunbi and Rise, sadly passing away. I won't get into detail about this too much as I simply only bring it up again for some context about the group. I mean no disrespect to anyone involved, and I don't think this horrible tragedy should overshadow the incredible light and talent Ladies Code shared with the world. Because I think it's important to preserve the group's history, I wanted to share a piece of lost media regarding the group that hopefully we can get some more eyes on. On April 1st, 2014, Ladies Code performed at a baseball game in South Korea, and apparently, a recording of said performance does not exist. A post made in the Ladies Code subreddit suggests it was never recorded, while a comment claims the files were destroyed. Funnily enough, another user had made a post in the Ladies Code subreddit the day before asking about the possible video. And although they mention only seeing photos from that day, I simply can't find much of anything. I came across a ladies' code group on Amino in which a post mentions the event. At the Jamsil Baseball Stadium on April 1st, 2014, Ladies Code performed before the beginning of the LG Twins baseball game. The girls wore jerseys with their names on the back along with a number. I think unfortunately due to the tragic passing of Eunbi and Rise, it can be a bit difficult to find much information on the group that has nothing to do with the accident. I hope we can preserve as much as possible and celebrate the lives and careers of Ladies Code because their songs slap. I have fallen down the rabbit hole and I'm obsessed. If you're interested, Sojung, Ashley, and Zuni did return as a trio in 2015, releasing music under Ladies Code once again. I do believe, however, they are now on hiatus and pursuing solo careers, so definitely check that out if you're interested. So that was the Girly Lost Media Iceberg. Obviously, there is so much that I'm missing. I feel like the term girly is so vague that I could make 10 of these or a 10-hour version of these. If you want that, then buy me a new laptop because this little MacBook Air is not gonna do it for me. I really hope this resonated with you guys, and comment below if you do not identify as a girl, or you typically don't gravitate towards feminine media, but you sat through this video and you learned something new. I think at the end of the day, girly media in general is severely undercovered here on YouTube, but especially girly lost media. I think the lost media community is predominantly male, which obviously isn't a bad thing, so it's not surprising these cases aren't discussed at length like others, but that's why I felt the need to make this and possibly introduce girly lost media to a new audience, put it all in one spot for the people who are new to this type of thing. But yeah, this is really important to me, so I'm really excited for this video and to see what you guys think. Let me know if you'd like a part 2. Yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I love you guys and I'll see you next week. Bye!